The widow of Pulse nightclub shooter Omar Mateen will undergo mental health testing. That request by the Justice Department was just okayed by a federal judge today. WESH-TV's Greg Fox has details tonight on how Noor Salman hopes to fight her charges in court.
Noor Salman was indicted for allegedly providing materials to a terrorist and destroying documents and records in a conspiracy the Justice Department claims was instrumental in helping her husband, Omar Mateen, plan and carry out the mass murders of 49 people inside the Pulse nightclub in Orlando last year. While her legal team hasn't said much more since her April court appearance.
We had her arraignment today. She entered a plea of not guilty. It's going to be a long road, and she's fine. Under a new judge's order, Salman will have to submit to a videotape screening by a government psychiatric expert. She's planning a defense related to mental disease or defect, and that the condition has a strong bearing on the issue of guilt. Also under a judge's order, counsel for the defendant will not be permitted to attend the evaluation. One question still being debated: can Salman get a fair trial in Orlando? One defense attorney says no.
This is a bad spot to have this trial. Everybody in the Orlando community was affected by this. This is something vivid in everyone's memories.
In September, the court will send out 800 to 1,000 summons along with a questionnaire on how much a person knows about this highly publicized case. Then both sides will take 2 to 3 days in October to begin pouring through them to determine a potential jury pool. And trial for Noor Salman is set for March 1st. Her mental health evaluation is scheduled for sometime next week. Court documents also show that attorneys on both sides are on deadline for September 1st to turn in any new arguments in this case. Summer.
All right, Greg, thank you.
Lawyers of the widow of Pulse nightclub shooter say that she suffers from PTSD. Now Noor Salman's defense team will argue against statements made during her interrogation. That's the latest in a court filing that was made late last night. WESH's Greg Fox has those details.
On the same day, an Orlando federal court judge ordered Noor Salman to submit to a mental health evaluation conducted by the U.S. Justice Department psychiatrist. Her attorneys filed a notice late Tuesday night saying the defense intends to offer evidence of her mental conditions as they relate to her susceptibility to suggestion at the time of her interrogation. While defense attorneys declined to elaborate on the notice, the filing suggests investigators, according to the defense, may have pressured Salman to say things that she did not intend to say or admit to actions she might not have taken as it relates to her husband Omar Mateen's actions. Mateen gunned down 49 people inside Orlando's Pulse nightclub just more than a year ago. And while published reports say Salman was with Mateen when he bought ammunition and visited Pulse prior to the shooting, she has said she had no knowledge of the plot and was physically and verbally abused by Mateen. Her new court filing also reads, the defense also gives notice of the mental disease of post-traumatic stress disorder at or before the time of the attack, which the defense also intends to offer. Salman is scheduled to be tried March 1st, 2018, but it's unclear if the defense will press for a change of venue, given the publicity surrounding the nation's worst shooting massacre. Greg Fox, WESH-2 News.
WESH News investigates and covers new evidence the government is using against the widow of the gunman in the Pulse nightclub massacre. Prosecutors say Noor Salman helped plan the attack, and they have proof she came up with the cover story. WESH News investigates. Greg Fox takes us through the newly filed documents.
WESH-2 Investigates previously explained that the Justice Department alleges Noor Salman told Fort Pierce police that her husband, Pulse nightclub shooter Omar Mateen, would not have engaged in violence unless he was protecting himself. But in new court filings, federal prosecutors go into more details about what they intend to prove in court. It comes in a response to a motion by Salman's defense team for more particulars, more information about the government's case, in which prosecutors described as a veiled attempt to preview the U.S.'s legal and evidentiary theories on how it intends to prove the offenses charged. They further argued they have provided to the defense a number of pieces of key evidence, including phones seized from the defendant and Omar Mateen, to prove Salman engaged in obstruction by misleading conduct. Then, stunningly, prosecutors say they want to be transparent and provide specific allegations they claim will directly connect the Pulse nightclub massacre committed by Mateen to Salman. The government writes Salman's obstructive conduct extended to deleting text messages on her phone on the night of Mateen's attack, including one informing him of the cover story she had devised. When questioned, the government claims Salman lied, stating to FBI special agents that Mateen had only one firearm. In fact, he had an assault rifle and 9mm semi-automatic pistol, and stating that she was unaware that Mateen was planning to conduct a violent terrorist attack. Now, just yesterday, the judge issued a stern warning to defense counsel for not providing expert witnesses to the court by an August 1 deadline. But a transcript obtained by WESH-2 Investigates of a July 24th hearing shows the judge was annoyed then at Salman's defense team because their computer expert had yet to begin a 2-month job of examining evidence. That witness's report is now due by mid-October. Trial is March 1st. Summer?
All right, Greg, thank you.
With the Las Vegas massacre launching a new investigation into the shooter and his potential motive, there are a number of developments in the case against Noor Salman.
Attorneys for the widow of the Pulse nightclub shooter have formally filed for a change of venue. But as WESH-2's Greg Fox explains, the government's attorneys have been slowed in their response by Hurricane Irma.
If convicted of aiding and abetting a terrorist, her husband, Omar Mateen, and obstruction of justice, Noor Salman could be sentenced to life in prison. Investigators have said she admitted to going to Pulse nightclub before the June 12, 2016 massacre that killed 49 people, and that she went with him to buy ammunition. But in filing for a change of venue, which would move Salman's trial out of Orlando, her attorneys say the statements allegedly made by the defendant could have irreparable effects on the jury selection process. They also cite Orlando Police Chief John Mina's remarks. Here's what he said the day Salman was arrested. "Nothing can erase the pain we all feel, but today there is some relief in knowing that someone will be held accountable for that horrific crime." Salman's defense claims the constant media coverage and Chief Mina's statements have infected this community sufficiently to prejudice a significant portion of the jury against Ms. Salman. The government asked for and was granted an extension of time to reply to the change of venue because prosecutors wanted to interview law enforcement officers in Fort Pierce, where Mateen and Salman lived, but were delayed due to Hurricane Irma. This week, the government is seeking to exclude 2 of 3 expert defense witnesses following psychological evaluations of Salman. In Orlando, Greg Fox, WESH-2 News.
And Salman's trial is now set to begin March 1st of next year.
This is WESH-2 News at 5.
These people are not Muslim to me. Noor Salman's social media posts like that one are made public. Tonight, how the widow of the Pulse nightclub shooter hopes her words against ISIS will help her in court. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Summer Knowles.
And I'm Stuart Moore. Salman is facing trial in federal court. Her legal team believes her track record will prove she did not help her husband plan the attack. WESH News investigative reporter Greg Fox has been sifting through these new court documents. He joins us live from outside of Pulse this evening. Greg, how are these posts relevant to the defense's case?
Oh, what they're essentially hoping to show through these various Facebook posts from Noor Salman is that she had nothing but disgust and contempt for ISIS, the terrorist organization. Of course, as we all know already, that on the phone with dispatchers during the Pulse attack, her husband was telling dispatchers that he had an allegiance with ISIS. But the defense team for Salman does not think that should convince anyone that Salman helped him before the attack. Noor Salman's defense is using a 1-month-long series of social media posts to try and argue that a government terrorism expert should be excluded from her trial. 16 months before her husband, Omar Mateen, murdered 49 people inside Orlando's Pulse nightclub, pledging allegiance to ISIS during a 911 call in the middle of the attack. Salman appeared to express contempt for ISIS in Facebook posts. "I don't consider the people that do terrorist attacks Muslim. Islam is a peaceful and beautiful religion if followed right." Weeks later, after reports that ISIS tortured and executed a Jordanian pilot, Salman posted, "I felt so bad for him. These ISIS people aren't Muslim to me." Days later, after Jordan's military launched more than 50 airstrikes against ISIS targets, Salman wrote, "ISIS messed with the wrong people. I'm proud of Jordan." Salman's attorneys plan to use her online comments as ammunition to try and convince the court not to let the Justice Department call a University of Maryland terrorism expert, saying in a case motion, quote, "William Brannett's testimony is only marginally, if at all, relevant to Salman's knowledge of Mateen's intent to provide material support to ISIS by conducting an attack." Trial of Noor Salman on obstruction and providing material support for terrorism is on track for March 1st. And of course, the hearing on the government's desire to call this expert witness, and of course, that the discussion of the Facebook posts will happen at a hearing on January 19th. But before that, next month, during a long 2-day suppression hearing, December 21st and 22nd, a range of evidence will be reviewed in court in Orlando. Live in Orange County, Greg Fox, WESH 2 News.
Okay, Greg, thank you.
This is WESH 2 News at 6.
The widow of the Pulse nightclub gunman could have her biggest day in court tomorrow.
Noor Salman will be inside the federal courthouse for a hearing to hash out evidence that may be used against her at trial in the spring. WESH News investigative reporter Greg Fox with details on the unusual name on the government's witness list.
Noor Salman will be in Orlando federal court with her legal team fighting to exclude evidence the U.S. Attorney's Office aims to use to try and convict her. The widow of the Pulse nightclub shooter is charged with obstruction of justice and aiding and abetting a terrorist. The Justice Department believes it can prove she not only knew about the attack on the downtown Orlando nightclub in June of last year, but also helped plan it. WESH 2 News has obtained the government's witness list, which includes Mustafa Abbasin. The Port St. Lucie resident, shown here on his Facebook page, is married to Omar Mateen's sister. A WESH 2 News review of property and tax records in St. Lucie County shows the Pulse gunman sold his house to the Abbasins for just $100 in April 2016, just 2 months before the attack on Pulse. WESH 2 News also obtained a copy of the quit-claim deed that shows Noor Salman's signature as a witness to the sale. WESH 2 News sister station WPBF visited Abbasin's home and the one he bought from Mateen, and no one answered. Most of the rest of the government's named witnesses are police, some involved in searching Salman's Fort Pierce condo, and one of them who was a lead negotiator for the shooter during the massacre at Pulse. And the hearing that starts tomorrow is scheduled to last for 2 days. At least one former Orlando police officer has been summoned to appear and could testify. Trial for Noor Salman is March 1st. Jim?
Greg, thanks.
The government's case against Noor Salman has the Pulse gunman's widow in court in Orlando. Today is the first of a 2-day-long hearing. She's charged with obstruction of justice and aiding and abetting a terrorist. WESH 2's Greg Fox is live at the federal court right now. And Greg, how did Salman appear in court today?
Remarkably engaged. She had a lot of facial expressions as she was talking back and forth with attorneys on both sides of her there, listening to witness testimony, reacting to some of what the government witnesses were saying in this hearing. And at the end of these 2 days, and somewhere in the next couple of weeks, the judge will be digesting some of this information and determining what can be included and excluded when it comes to her trial. One of Noor Salman's attorneys brought her a lady's dark suit for potentially her biggest pretrial hearing. She wore her hair pulled back and spoke frequently with counsel. Before testimony, we tried to speak with her lead attorney about the judge's earlier denial of a change in the location of the trial. Can we just ask you, are you disappointed about the ruling on the change of venue?
I'm hoping to get a fair trial.
You feel like it's going to happen?
I'm working for it.
Andy, can we talk to you? Former Orlando Police Crisis Team negotiator Andrew Brennan testified first, saying he tried calling Salman's husband, Omar Mateen, 77 times, most often with no answer during the massacre at Pulse nightclub. When they did connect, the gunman pledged allegiance to ISIS and implied he had a bomb.
I have a vest. Okay, you have a vest. Hey. I understand that. Okay, and so what kind of vest are you talking about? Is it a bullet-resistant vest? Is it a bomb vest? No.
But Brennan testified Mateen did not speak about having others in the club or working with anyone on the attack. Mr. Abbasin, can we talk to you, please? Mateen's brother-in-law, Mustafa Abbasin, also testified for the government, saying he was told to come to the FBI office in Fort Pierce to pick up Salman's son. He said he and other family members were in shock. Everyone in the house, when we were told, was crying when they heard about the shootings. He said he had no idea about it and no information about whether Salman was aware of her husband's actions. The trial in this case is still set for March 1st here at the District Courthouse in downtown Orlando. Coming up all new on WESH 2 News at 5, we'll hear from a detective in this case. He's from South Florida, and we'll tell you what scared him about showing up at Salman's apartment. Live in Orlando, Greg Fox, WESH 2 News.
The widow of the Pulse nightclub gunman is in federal court in Orlando right now.
She is fighting to have some of the government evidence against her excluded before she goes to trial March 1st. WESH 2's Greg Fox is live in downtown Orlando. And Greg, this has the look and feel of a trial.
Exactly. Instead of just a collection of lawyers talking with the judge about the evidence, we're looking at evidence. We have witnesses giving testimony. You have audio and video and photos being shown. And of course, at the end of it, the judge will review it and determine what's in and what's out for trial. Fort Pierce police made the trip to Orlando to testify in the case against Noor Salman, charged with aiding and abetting a terrorist and obstructing justice. The government claims that she helped her husband plan the attack on Pulse nightclub last year. At one point during the suppression hearing, photos and video from inside the building where 49 people were murdered was shown in court, including images of gunman Omar Mateen after he was killed by police. Fort Pierce officers went to find Salman at her apartment while Mateen was holding people hostage. Lieutenant William Hall testified they were advised to use caution for possible booby traps and explosives. When Salman invited them inside, he said, "She scared me when she reached for her phone. Phones can be used to trigger bombs." At one point, he said Salman asked if she and her son were going to Disney. Mr. Abbasin, can we talk to you, please? Declining comment, Mateen's brother-in-law, Mustafa Abbasin, testified he and other family members were in shock. Everyone in the house, when we were told, was crying when they heard about the shootings. He said Salman told him nothing to indicate that she was aware of Mateen's actions. Under defense questioning, an FBI agent admitted to finding a Father's Day present in the apartment and was grilled about the lack of more thorough note-taking. Can we just ask you, are you disappointed about the ruling on the change of venue?
I'm hoping to get a fair trial.
Salman's attorney is hoping to exclude evidence that appears to show his client helping Mateen before the attack. And one of the FBI agents that took the stand today said that when she was first asked to search her apartment, Salman said no, but then after they talked with her for a while, she did give written consent to search her apartment. This hearing continues tomorrow, and after that, the judge will review the evidence and decide again what may be excluded from trial, and that trial is scheduled for March 1st. Live in Orange County, Greg Fox, WESH 2 News.
This is WESH 2 News at noon.
A surprise in court during a hearing for the widow of the Pulse nightclub gunman. Thank you for joining us. I'm Michelle Imparato.
And I'm Jason Guy. Noor Salman's attorneys decided not to call her to the stand to testify in this key hearing leading up to her trial on March 1st. WESH 2's Greg Fox is live at the federal courthouse. Greg, any explanation as to why Salman wasn't called to the stand?
It really caught everybody by surprise. The prosecution walked in and said they had no more witnesses to call, and then quickly the defense attorney for Noor Salman stood up and said that she would not be called to the stand, and essentially then they moved into closing statements. So we have yet to hear Noor Salman, in her own words, in a stand in front of a microphone, explaining what she may or may not have known before the Pulse nightclub attack. Let's show you this video just a few minutes after the hearing ended earlier this morning. Neither the defense nor prosecution would speak with us as they left the courthouse. They each had roughly 15 minutes to sum up their cases. During closing statements, the defense vehemently argued that Noor Salman felt as though she was detained by police and FBI the morning of the attack and should have been read her rights to an attorney and to remain silent, of course, before she was questioned and before her apartment was searched. The government countered that Salman's husband was an active shooter. There were concerns of explosives in their Fort Pierce apartment. And perhaps most importantly, the prosecutor said she gave consent to search the apartment and consent to speak with her. Take a look from the assistant U.S. attorney. Quote, "The officers were reacting to a horrible situation and were concerned about public safety while gathering information. The FBI agents gained consent to speak with her initially, so she was not entitled to be read her rights." But from Salman's attorney, it's very tempting to be sympathetic to the officers, but a reasonable person would say she was detained and should have been read her rights. Judge Paul Byron will go over all of the closing statements today and over the testimony that lasted all day yesterday, and he'll make a ruling. As yet, we don't know when. The trial is scheduled for March. Live in Orange County, Greg Fox, WESH-TV News.
Noor Salman's defense team has elected to keep her silent. For now. The Pulse nightclub gunman's widow goes to trial in March on charges of aiding a terrorist and obstruction. WESH-2's Greg Fox reports today's key hearing could determine whether a jury ever learns what she told the FBI the morning of the attack.
It's still under advisement.
I know. You think you're going to get that fair trial, though?
Noor Salman's attorneys elected not to have the widow of the Pulse nightclub gunman take the stand to explain what she may and may not have known before Omar Mateen killed 49 people and injured at least 68 others before being shot and killed by police. Among the items Noor Salman's defense team is seeking to exclude from trial are handwritten statements that she made in front of an FBI agent. Statements in which she indicated that she knew about her husband planning an attack and regretted not telling someone. The fact that FBI agents and police talked with Salman and searched her Fort Pierce apartment while she sat in a patrol car has her attorney arguing that all statements and all evidence gathered before she was read her rights be tossed out. Police said they were concerned explosives might be in the apartment. From the defense, it makes absolutely no sense. I'm not arguing there was an emergency, but we challenged the need to detain her in a patrol vehicle. Salman was told she was being held for someone else, the FBI. She should have been read her rights at that point. Prosecutors countered that police and the FBI gained permission to question Salman about Mateen. Salman was not entitled to be read her rights. She was not in custody. The police encounter with her was entirely consensual. Do you expect a decision today? There's no indication when the judge will rule. In Orlando, Greg Fox, WESH-2 News.